Hello. The Minnesota Department of Transportation, in partnership with the Federal Highway Administration, the Metropolitan Council, Hennepin County, and the cities of Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center, and Minneapolis, are providing a series of introductory presentations about the environmental impact statement process for the Highway 252 I-94 corridor. This presentation is for people who live, work, and play in and around the Highway 252 and I-94 corridors. It looks at noise and air quality impacts of transportation projects, and it explains how these impacts are addressed through the process of developing an environmental impact statement. This presentation talks about key factors affecting the Highway 252 I-94 EIS, including traffic noise analysis, air pollution and public health, greenhouse gases, and noise and air quality in the Highway 252 I-94 EIS. Let's start this presentation by discussing traffic noise impacts first. Anyone who lives, works, or plays near roadways with high traffic volumes understands they can be noisy. MnDOT has an existing video on their website with information on the noise barrier identification process. You can Google search MnDOT noise barriers to find and watch this short video. It was produced based on MnDOT's 2015 noise policy, and therefore some requirements may not be relevant for all future road construction noise wall projects. However, more recent 2017 MnDOT noise requirements can be referenced separately. This video is still relevant and a good source of background information for reference. MnDOT follows a highly structured, data-driven, and collaborative process to determine if a transportation project should include noise walls or some other type of noise relief. This process has 3 steps: field measurement surveys, noise modeling, and noise reduction analysis. MnDOT begins a traffic noise analysis by measuring road sounds at a sample of nearby outdoor areas where there is frequent activity, like front yards, patios, or parks. Computer models are used to predict if there will be increased noise in the future after a project is built, and if noise levels along the corridor exceed the federal noise criteria, either now or in the future, to require a noise wall or other attempt to reduce the noise. Noise walls and noise berms are barriers built along roads to reduce the sound from traffic. Berms are mounds of dirt built between a road and properties. Noise walls are used more often because they require less space. MnDOT determines if noise walls are possible and reasonable. A noise wall is possible if there are no physical or safety reasons why it cannot be built, and the noise wall reduces sound by at least 5 decibels. Decibels are a measurement of noise used to determine how loud something is. A reduction of at least 5 decibels is considered noticeable to the human ear, and is the threshold used to determine if a property will benefit from a noise wall. The noise wall is then evaluated to determine if it is reasonable. A noise wall is considered reasonable if it costs no more than $78,500 per benefited building unit. Additionally, at least one unit must be able to get at least a 7 decibel noise reduction from the wall. Once it is established that a noise wall is both possible and reasonable, property owners and residents who receive a 5 decibel or more reduction in sound are invited to vote for or against the proposed noise wall. The noise wall is built if points in favor of the noise wall exceed points against it, and there is at least a 50% response rate based on the total available voting points. If the 50% response rate is not achieved, then MnDOT will resend voting ballots and attempt to get at least a 25% response rate for each wall. Air pollution is another environmental impact considered and addressed through the EIS process. Under the Clean Air Act, federal and state governments regulate 2 types of air pollution caused by cars and trucks: common pollutants and mobile source air toxics, or MSATs. These are pretty technical terms, so let's briefly discuss each. The Clean Air Act requires the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, to set limits for 6 common air pollutants. These pollutants are found all over the U.S., and all of them are associated with emissions that come out of motor vehicles. Limits on common air pollutants are called National Ambient Air Quality Standards. These standards are based on environmental and/or human health standards for exposure. The 6 common air pollutants are carbon monoxide, lead, nitrogen dioxide, ozone, particulate matter, and sulfur dioxide. The Clean Air Act regulates mobile source air toxics too, or MSATs. MSATs are toxic or hazardous pollutants emitted from cars and trucks. Toxic pollutants are those known to elevate the risk of cancer and other serious health conditions. The Clean Air Act does not set limits or standards for MSATs as it does common air pollutants. MSAT analysis is required for transportation projects with the potential to add capacity to high volume roadways. This analysis will determine whether the project is likely to increase or decrease MSAT emissions compared to existing conditions and a no-build alternative, or do nothing. Minnesota generally enjoys good air quality. Statewide, our air meets federal standards in nearly all health benchmarks. Overall, pollution levels have been going down, and this trend is expected to continue. This progress reflects regulation, technology improvements, and awareness of the health impacts of air pollution. As part of the EIS process for the Highway 252 I-94 corridors, project alternatives will be reviewed in the draft EIS phase for their compliance with the Clean Air Act. Air quality is not the same in all parts of Minnesota and doesn't affect all Minnesotans equally. People in some areas experience pollution levels that, while within federal standards, are high enough to worsen serious health conditions. In addition, health inequities result in some populations being more vulnerable to the harmful effects of air pollution. A recent report from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency acknowledges that elderly people, children, and people with chronic heart and lung conditions are more vulnerable to the effects of air pollution. Further, it concludes that low-income and minority populations are more likely to live in areas with potential air pollution sources. Their locations next to roadways is just one factor that contributes to this. Greenhouse gases are gases that contribute to climate change. In Minnesota, transportation or vehicle emissions recently became the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions. One of the ways MnDOT is responding to the climate crisis is requiring greenhouse gas analysis as part of transportation projects, along with the air quality analysis required by the Clean Air Act. MnDOT looks at the potential impact of greenhouse gas due to a project's construction and potential future traffic. Air quality analysis is a highly structured process guided by federal and state regulations. MnDOT follows these regulations and will analyze the Highway 252 I-94 project's potential impact on common air pollutants and priority mobile source air toxics identified by the Federal Highway Administration. This includes conducting an analysis of carbon monoxide levels. It is required because of the high traffic volume intersections on Highway 252 that are considered carbon monoxide hotspots. In addition, greenhouse gas emissions will be reported when the preferred alternative is determined. So how will noise and air pollution be considered in the Highway 252 I-94 EIS? The Highway 252 I-94 project alternatives are refined through the scoping phase and advanced into the draft EIS phase. The noise and air quality considerations are accounted for in the draft EIS phase. In the draft EIS phase, the goal is to identify a preferred alternative based on analysis using a wide range of social, environmental, and economic criteria, including noise and air quality criteria mentioned in this presentation. In the draft EIS phase, noise and air pollution impacts of project alternatives are compared to similar impacts if no project was built. Differences in noise, air quality, and other criteria between project alternatives and the no-build alternative are considered in the selection of a preferred alternative. Once a preferred alternative is selected, a noise analysis is conducted to determine the need for noise barriers. Voting for noise barriers occurs later in the process, after the publication of the draft EIS. In addition to analyses guided by federal and state regulation, MnDOT is also facilitating an equity and health assessment as part of the Highway 252 I-94 EIS. This assessment is intentional, enhanced engagement of affected communities on issues of equity and health. Information gathered from this process will help shape the Highway 252 I-94 project alternatives, as well as determining the existing conditions of equity and health in the Highway 252 I-94 corridor area, identification of potential equity and health benefits and impacts of potential project alternatives, and identification of equity and health objectives for use in the project's environmental impact statement. MnDOT is establishing an advisory group of community members to guide the equity and health assessment and support effective outreach to diverse groups along the Highway 252 I-94 corridors. Thank you for your interest in the Highway 252 I-94 EIS. We hope you will check out the other EIS 101 presentations available on the Highway 252 I-94 project website. They include presentations like this one that provide background on the project. You can share comments, find out what's happening next, and stay connected through the project website. Sign up for project updates by sharing your email address with us. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day.